Hi everybody. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Sargis. My teammates are Andrea, Kenneth, and Nathan. And with my team, we'd like to present to you a unique case study which involves hospital operations. Now, to get things started, we're faced with a situation where we need to cut down staff without negatively impacting the quality of service of the company. Now, some people will say, well, how can you accomplish this? How can you accomplish the same with less resources? Now, for most people, this is something that will be impossible. But for everybody in this room, not only is this not impossible, but it's actually a great opportunity to apply some of the things that we have learned here, to turn something that's impossible into a reality. And that's what this presentation will focus on today. Now, I'm sure that a majority of us use similar tools and techniques. I'm confident that all of us use different measures in order to get to our final destination. And that's what we're excited about learning today. So without further ado, I'd like to jump into our first slide. So here's the situation of our company. We need to reduce the staff by 5% for the new fiscal year without negatively impacting the service levels and the performance metrics set by the company. And if we're not successful through improved planning and control, the board of directors will automatically reduce the budget for the next year, and the patients will suffer tremendously due to unknown budget cuts. So our patients are increasing and the staff needs to be cut. So how can the hospital accommodate this? Well, first we need to understand the current situation and its shortcomings through data analysis. And then we can go ahead and develop forecasts for the number of patients and the system requirements. Afterwards, we can try to drastically improve the planning and scheduling initiatives. And lastly, we can focus on optimizing the total number of nurses and their efficiency throughout the system. To understand the situation, we wanted to visualize the data that we are provided with. So we looked at our data on an hourly basis, and we then looked at our data on the daily basis. We looked at the average number of patients, the average amount of time it took to treat the patients, and over here we can see there is a there's a relationship between these variables, which I will talk about in the next slide. So because of this, we wanted to test to see if there is a relationship between the variables statistically. So we plotted our data points. We obtained an equation with an R-squared value. So over here we have the number of patients and the duration it took to treat the patients. And as we can see, as the number of patients increase, the amount of time it takes to treat the patients also increases. So about 73% of the variation can be explained by our model, but it is still not optimized. So in order to push this even higher, we set our constant, our intercept, equal to 0, and a much higher R-squared value was obtained, thus reducing the error of our model. These are our target values. If nurses are paid by the hour, then the total number of nurses per day would be 15.2. If the nurses are paid by salary, then the total number of nurses would amount to 27. This slide focuses on the forecasts. Over here we have the forecast for the 6th year, and this breaks down the number of patients that we're expecting to treat on a monthly basis for the duration of the year. And this graph over here shows the number of patients treated for the last 6 years, and as we can see, more and more patients are being treated every year as the hospital continues. So that's good. The hospital is growing, we're treating more patients, so the customer base is growing over time. And here is when we get into the analysis for the number of nurses, and we use this formula, ratio multiplier, in order to obtain the number of nurses that we would need. And this breaks it down for all the different hours and for all the different days, and the requirements that these days will have for the nurses in order for the system to work properly. Our previous slide led to the following results. So over here we have the average number of nurses per day for all the different months, and this over here shows the combined average, or the average number of nurses per day for year 6, which equals to 14.32. But we didn't just stop here. This slide illustrates our linear programming attempt So over here we have our objective function with the aim to minimize the number of nurses, and this over here are the constraints that we have placed for the objective function. So our next slide illustrates the findings that the linear programming led to for all the different months. And this slide illustrates our final results and our conclusion. So our average number of nurses per day in year 6 was calculated to be 14.32. Our target value was 15.2, so we're below, we're good. Our maximum nurses needed was calculated through linear programming to be 23. Our target value was 27, so we're well under the limit as well. And as a result of that, our entire system requirements, or the staffing requirements, have been reduced by 21%. As we were working with our team on this case study, there were alternative ways which we thought of in order to save the company money without traditionally following the methods that they suggested. So the main initiative that we came up with was to analyze whether or not hiring more full-time nurses would actually reduce the overtime costs associated with on-call nurses and possibly lead to lower system costs while maintaining the same quality and the quantity of service. So some of the questions we asked were: how much is each nurse paid per hour? Are the nurses on salary? How many on-call nurses are called in per shift? So if we had these answers provided to us, then we would be able to analyze our data, use some of our tools in order to see if perhaps this would have been a better alternative or a more feasible solution for the company's needs rather than cutting down the staff by 5%. Thank you all very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you.